Hi, morning Jatin. Thanks for your time. When did you buy this car?
I bought this a year ago, I think a year and a month.
And how many kilometers would you have done?
6,500.
What's the mileage of this car?
I think I'll say 10 to 12. 10 to 12.
This is diesel.
This is diesel.
Would you have any idea about the mileage for highway?
I think it's, I'll say 9 to 12. 10-ish is in the city and 12-ish
on the highway.
But I'm pretty happy because, I for my office and all, I think I fill the tanks twice in a month, which is
pretty. Have you got this car serviced?
Yeah, I got it serviced.
So, what was the cost for that?
It was 26,000 rupees. I thought the first service would be around 18 to 20,000. It comes on a bit of higher side, 27,000.
Okay.
I came to know later you can do away with. The oil change needs to happen at 20,000 kilometers.
Okay.
As per Audi's website and my friends who drive it globally, they have told me.
Okay.
But I think you can save on 8 to 10,000. And the servicing
because of the oil, if you don't take the
oil and few things which you would not have reached the threshold. One, and this is the wax polish of this sunroof.
Okay.
That I think is not doable because the class quality is quite good. We don't do off-road driving so much.
Okay.
So this is another 6,000-7,000. I think you can opt out of it.
Okay.
That's my learning experience.
So there is no free service with this car?
No, there's no free service. I wanted to go to a SUV, considering the road conditions, and to make sure I can drive around out of the city. So I started with Hyundai, the Tucson.
Okay.
And I went for that. It was just launched, I think, last year. And I did the reviews and all, but the moment I got to know the price points, and I didn't see much of a difference between Creta and Tucson. So it was a put off, and the selling process I saw in Hyundai, right? So the price was pretty premium, and I didn't get that engagement I was expected to get. So it was like the sales pitch was it's selling like hotcakes, and you come and buy, sort of thing. A Merc showroom near Hyundai showroom, and I said might as well I try a GLA because the price point was just a few lakhs of a difference. So GLA was a kind of a hatchback car. I mean, it's a SUV as promoted by Merc, but Mercedes is not a SUV at all. It's a hatchback. It has the best engine of the class.
Okay.
Least noisy, good acceleration. But Mercedes is, is not a SUV, so to say, what the Indian buyers would consider. It's quite a small. It's like a small, popped up car, and it's supposedly quite rugged. But it's not a family car. I think it's a fun SUV for a single guy or a couple. BMW has a better acceleration, no doubt. X1. The tires are costly. It's pretty crampy. If you sit in a X1, probably the knees would be touching the steering. And getting in out of the vehicle is pretty cumbersome. Okay. And it has fancy features like X1 would you would get the speedometer and digital display here.
Heads-up display.
Display, but those are all jazzy. Okay. Though they've modified the looks and all, it looks like more like a SUV nowadays. Okay. But it didn't give me a total. It would seem to be a bumped up SUV rather than a total SUV. Superb. If I would have gone for a sedan, I mean, I was considering Superb, right? Okay. But what I'm told, it's the same engine, right? Q3 has the same engine which Superb has. Okay. So retuned for Audi. Okay. So I think it's less roomier, but I think the driving pleasure in this car is much better. I think the acceleration and all that have been tweaked. But if I would have gone for a sedan, I mean the rear space is unbeatable. It would be as good as a S-Class, right? So that was a temptation. But I think since I wanted a SUV, I went for Q3. And I had tried Audi, but couldn't make up my mind. But I did a review again after doing all this. Okay. And then when I came back, I found the car to be suiting my requirements of me and my wife and 2 kids. Okay. It is not spacious. But I think it's the build it has good road presence, and it gives you a good feel of driving a stable car. So that was a driving factor. I found this to be the best value proposition, and the car seemed like a SUV. The tires, the distance from the sitting distance from the road was pretty good. So this was pretty convincing to me. Of all the three. And in fact, Evoque for a matter, but Evoque, I had been in my friend's car, it was pretty cramped. So I thought, this seemed and looked more like SUV rather than the other two. Okay. So I bought. Driving comfort, I'll rate it 4.5. Okay. Sitting comfort, I'll rate it 4. Getting in and out is good. I think it's 4 out of 5.
The drivability of this car,
I would give it 4.5. Otherwise, it's bang on. The buck for the rupees there. The engine is responsive. The gear shift, you can feel it. You know, the moment it hits 2000 RPM, it would happen. So
2000 happen means what happens?
You know, there's this small lag in the gear changes. The one tip I can recommend is, you know, the moment you hitting 2000 RPM, just leave it. You know, put your feet off the accelerator or go easy on it.
Okay.
And you get a bit better thrust.
Okay.
Right. And otherwise, you know, I don't tend to, you know, work heavily on the accelerator at the lower speeds or in the city as well.
Okay.
But still, you know, I think it has much more power than you use, so you don't have to sweat while overtaking and all. Beyond 100 kilometers, you have to be very careful with the speed and all, because the real torque of the diesel starts to get in.
What do you mean very careful? It becomes faster?
Yeah, it becomes very fast. Braking is excellent. It's just that on Indian roads you have to be careful beyond 100, because the acceleration comes up very fast. The lag which I was talking about in 0 to 40 just disappears, and in fact it is too good at the other level. So you have to be very careful at higher levels.
Okay.
You know, and it's really swift beyond 80 kilometers. The driving pleasure is unbeatable. I had driven a CRV prior to this, and you know, I drove it for a couple of months. Then for servicing or something, I had to take out my CRV again. Okay. Then, you know, otherwise it's pretty normal. I think we're driving one car, we're driving another car. But once you drive Q3 or Merc, so to say, but for me it's Q3, and then you drive back Fortuner or a CRV for me again, you would then feel the difference. What is the difference in driving those two comparable SUVs?
What kind, if you could explain?
First is, you know, the moment you start, you'll feel a vibration here. The steering would this, you know, the gearbox and all. And the moment you hold the steering, there's a vibration, and then, you know, the engine thrust, and by the time, you know, the accelerator, you press the accelerator and the vehicle moves, the lag. Then you realize, you know, what actual they're driving these cars, what kind of experience these cars bring in. It's very sublime, and you know, you get attuned to it. But the moment you go back, then you realize what you are missing.
Okay.
The road presence is phenomenal. Maneuverability is superb. Fabulous to manage the corners and the turns, because I mean, the drive control, contours, managing it on you know, a swivel in a road is pretty easy with this. And there's no body roll, no nothing which you can talk or discuss, even think about in other vehicles. It's not there. It's pretty planted on the road. The steering has amazing control, and I think the Quattro engine is something to record. The steering is pretty responsive at any speed, and I think this is the feature I loved in Audi. I mean, it's better than the Beamer, because the steering is best in class. You have good control. It is not very light, so that, you know, it maneuvers on its own. There's a good grip.
So as the speed increases, the steering becomes harder?
Harder, yes, it
becomes harder.
Right. And you see it's pretty light right now. Safety is absolutely good. The doors and the frame is solid. You know, the airbags, I think it's everywhere you want them to be. Yeah. And
6 to 8, I think, maybe?
6 to 8, yes, probably.
Okay.
And you know, the small measures given, like you cannot open the bonnet unless you know, this door is open. So those kind of features are there, thoughtful. You know, it seems irritating at the beginning, but you know, there's a logic behind it. There's this button which especially for you know, office goers with the steep parking, or you know, when you're doing off-roading, you know, pull this P button. So suppose there's an emergency situation, you have to stop in within 100 meters and you're driving at, you know, 60 plus or 70 plus. You can keep on pulling this till the time the car comes to a standstill. So suppose you feel, you know, the car is getting out of control, leave it, then again you can pull it. And so
which means you can use this instead of a brake.
You can use this instead of brake, and it works, you know, in a very I think it understands the situation, so the car would not, you know, go sideways, switch the lane or something. There'll be a lot of traction in the tires, but it does come to a standstill. We accidentally tried this in the test drive. I mean, one of my relatives just pulled it without knowing the consequences. I mean, before it could be explained detailed in a detailed manner, he tried it, and the car did what it was supposed to do. And second is this A button beyond that. If you press that, I think the while on an incline or a steep decline, the car stands still within a few inches. And the moment the traffic clears or you want to move again, you just press the accelerator. It gets on off mode, and then you start.
So this is the hill hold assist.
Hill hold assist, yeah. And this is, pretty responsive and quite effective. The view is excellent. Unlike the Honda cars where the bar would come a little higher, and you will have to,
So the pillars are not blocking.
Pillars are not blocking your view. The mirrors are excellently placed. I think one thing, you can park this car easily while in reverse, and I prefer to do that rather than this way, because looking at the mirrors, you get a very good idea of the adjoining vehicles or walls or whatever the marks would be. So that's pretty good.
So the cabin is pretty
insulated,
quiet and insulated.
And doesn't seem like a diesel engine, barring the first few kilometers, as I told you. Absolutely negligible vibration or movement in the steering or the console, which you find in other cars coming after 2 years. 1 or 2 years.
So no door noise, no
door noise, nothing, no frame noise. Parking is pretty easy. Generally in my own housing complex where I park the car, if you get a feel, then, or suppose this space we see, parking is pretty easy. I can do it in one shot. Right, I can just go and park easily. So it can be that easy like this. So and reversing it also is pretty easy. So it doesn't look cumbersome. It's not cumbersome. So it's a fabulous city car to drive. I did a comparison. I think the new Fortuner and Endeavour and maybe Superb or Kodiaq, I think now is in the same range, right? With the kind of discounts the dealerships are giving. So I think it's in same range, and this becomes quite tempting buy. The only thing which has been a big bother is the first 40 to 60 kilometers, 40 I would say, and especially if you're going on a long drive or a highway.
You're saying 40 to 60 kilometers, that is the speed?
0 to 40, the pickup and the thrust. I didn't realize this in the first 8 months, but later on, this thing did start coming up. The Audi guy himself told, sir, the pickup is not as good as you would see in any other car. But after 8 months, I realized what he meant. But after 40 kilometers, 60 kilometers, I think it's just seamless. I mean, there's no bother at all. A few inches at the rear seat would have made it excellent. And the bucket seats would have seemed more large. But that's lagging. If you're intending to drive it yourself, then it's a better SUV to have. If you're not going for a sedan, I'm talking for this particular model.
Yes.
And you want to make an entry into premium segment, I think this is the car you should start with. If God is kind, you would want to, buy a S-Class or Q7 or whatever GLE is.
Correct.
But I think this is the car to start, your premium car segment.
Why?
Because I think it's the best value proposition. It is a decent car in size and dimensions. Otherwise, you would buy a X1 or GLA. I think you would be compromising. This is the best car to buy if you want to buy in a entry level premium segment car. For a 2 and 2 family to buy, I think it's a good car to have. That is once in a while you want to take this car to office, and drive it in the city. It's good to have. I think it's just the thrust, and if you want more space, then don't go for it. But if you are looking for a proper 5-seater, or if you do a lot of say off-roading where you are out of the Audi sales network, you want to do Uttarakhand, Himalayas and all that, then I think you should consider maybe a Toyota or a Mahindra. And the other thing would be maybe the breakage and the services cost is also on the higher side.
I must thank you for all your time, and thanks for your patience also. Thank you very much.